the Education Affinity Group. So yeah, if they're doing research, that can be with us in particular activities. They can have access to all the activities going on anywhere, and actually research, because our students are reflecting at the same time on education. They're reflecting on their own learning. So again, what we're interested in, as you know, is we're interested in transforming language education, foreign language education. So we're asking our students to reflect on that. So again, if your students are going to do that, perhaps they would also be able to participate in wider communities of reflection on that question. Mm. So I don't know. Yeah, and the number 9, David Richardson in Sweden, is operating from the start of October, the 9th of October, Second Life for teaching. So again, if you're interested in offering that to your students, they can go off and they can have a field trip in Second Life. So I don't know.
Lots of options.
Yeah.
Hi.
So Marita's there too.
I'm here. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, Marita.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Lena, can you hear me too?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, good.
I just recap. I don't know when you arrived, Marita.
You were talking about number 7.
Okay, all right. So basically, you have all been introduced to a Google Plus community for teacher education, where you've seen that there are other people around the world who are interested in the same thing. Right. So that is a sandbox. It's a play area for us to then imagine what we're going to do next for a public space. Mm. So that is something which will be launched on the 5th, I think it's the, come back to the top, the week of the 13th of October. Okay. So again, if you want to get your students into that community, they will be in that community able to meet up with people who are training to be teachers but not language teachers from Clermont-Ferrand. They'll also be able to meet up with other people working in education, not necessarily language teachers, who are also interested in this business of how do we transform education. So that, if you like, is a meeting point where they can share what they're doing in education. So clearly there are all sorts of things which would interest our students. So for example, if we know that we have people from around the world, then we can start asking questions like, could you show us your teaching environment? Can you talk to us about what difficulties or what things you think work in your environment, and so on. So that could be mini video conferencing, that can be discussion, that can be anything we care to imagine. It's just a question of getting the people in the right place. So if it's part of your program, then it's a question of seeing how that is structured out. If it's informal, then it can go anywhere, because if you like, we've found a way to actually group people by affinity across platforms. So that's via hashtags. So once you know the hashtag, that means that you can then match up people from anywhere. So for example, in the past week, we've had students having long conversations with Brazilians on Twitter, and then we have a guy called Thomas Savino, who is one of Marcin's students, and he invented a hashtag for his Polish classes. They're learning English, so that introduces a new element. Well, I mean, it really can go anywhere. It's up to you.
Yes, well, actually my course that I was thinking about starts on the 30th of October.
The 30th of October, okay.
Yeah, and I need the first session to introduce the thing to them. And I was thinking there are something like 49 students there.
49.
So 49 at the moment. There might be more. but around 50. So what I was thinking is that I would have several tasks, maybe 3 or 4 different options for them, so they can choose, or maybe I'll divide them somehow. We'll see.
These
So
are English.
sorry.
Which students are these?
They're students to become language students, English language students. Some of them might study English as a minor subject, so this would mean that they have Swedish or German as the first language, or they might be class teacher students.
Okay.
But everyone is studying. This is an English language department. And this is a kind of general intermediate course on language and learning. So, so we'll do something using the web, and we have some sessions face to face. So, so we'll try something, a few things, and then we'll use that as a resource in our discussions in class.
Okay. So all we know is what we can do to help you with those tasks. What tasks you would like to do?
Yeah. Well, what I need to consider is that they are, because it's a big group and we don't have computer club. Of course, people have their own computers and their net. So I have to. I can't advise them in technologies. So they have to be able to get going on their own. Most of them are certainly quite digitally literate, but there might be some people who might need some support. But of course, this would be an opportunity also for learning different kinds of things. So
yeah, I think that's a very good point. That's to say that once they are actually in with a group of people, they can get support from them.
Yeah, sure. So and it would have to be, because this is not such a long time. We are going to end the course December 11th. And we need a final session so that everything is completed by the end of the first week of December.
Okay.
So it would have to. And of course, these people are not doing this full time, so they have all sorts of other things. So it can't be too heavy.
No. Okay.
So all sorts of things to consider. But yes, well, thinking about what to choose, let me see again. I think for some people it might be the idea of observing or even tutoring might be fun. Yeah. Because some people are definitely becoming language teachers. Others are considering maybe, and others, there are maybe some people who don't necessarily plan to become teachers, but they are interested, of course, in this area because this is an elective course. Yeah. So I can't decide now. I have to think about.
So what I would suggest the following is that you get them to join up with the other teacher education people in the Google Plus group. That's the first thing.
Yes.
You show them there is a presentation which is, I think, the second document. Right, there is a present. No, it's not that one. It's the. Which one? It's not that one. I seem to have gone you 5 times the same document. Right, if I talk you through this presentation, so I'm going to.
So which one was it?
Yeah, I'm just going to show you now.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, you should have some slides. Is that right?
Yeah.
Can you see that, Marisa?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, I can see you now. Right, okay. So the way I go about things is that I start with this vision of a picnic, which is, I think, is accessible to anybody. So we have a group of people sitting somewhere in the world together, and we discuss about who these people could be. And then I talk to them that these are in fact people who didn't know each other before, and they seem to have some sort of affinity, and they are in fact all connected because of Clavedu. So we have UK students who, thanks to connections between institutions and Facebook, have arrived in Clermont-Ferrand in France because they were interested in coming to visit France, and so they were invited to stay by French students who wanted to welcome students from the UK, and they were international students. So we have people from Sri Lanka, we have another one from Germany, etc. So I think the first thing to get across to them is that we're interested in matching people up or grouping people together because of things that they would do naturally. So that can be having a picnic, it can be having a party, it can be talking about their profession. So if you go down a bit, slide 6. Can you see slide 6?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So again, the spaces which they use to do that, that's entirely up to them. We can say that in Google Plus, there is a community. So in order to meet those other people, that's probably the best place for them to meet up. However, there's nothing to stop them working across platforms. So that's entirely up to them, unless the institution specifies this is where you're going to work. If you go down a bit more, then there is the same picture of the picnic, but this time it's slide 8, connected with technology. So again, the boy on the right may have a smartphone. Well, he's probably connected to all his friends on Facebook. So this again, it's a question of blurring the boundaries between the technology, what's online and what's offline. And again, if they're passionate about learning and they're passionate about teaching, then the boundaries are going to be less clear. So all of that to say that the hashtag here is key, because we can group people together in a place which is a park, or we can group them together in a place which is a Google community or a Facebook group or a Moodle, but they also need to be able to go where they want to find people that they want to speak about, which will represent other aspects of their life. So that could be they're interested in football, it could be poetry, it could be whatever. And so what we have done is we have set up a process whereby they invent tags, which then they can find other people within the network who recognize these tags. So I'm going to come out of that document a moment, and I'm going to share another document. Which is here. Okay, can you see that? It's a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so Clavedu, I explained to them, is a network of people who are interested in connecting around affinity. Well, those affinities can be professional, they can be academic, and they can be personal. In order for people to find each other, well, we may group them together between two classes. So, for example, between the Warwick students and the French trainee teachers. So that's one way, that's part of that academic program. So like Lena was talking about tasks, that's what we were doing with Warwick. Or it can be for personal questions around their passion for skiing or their passion for drama or whatever. because this is generative. We invent tags according to how the people within the network actually want to connect. So what I would say to your students, if I was going to speak to them, is we have a program. During this program, you will be connected to these students to do these tasks. You'll be evaluated on these tasks according to the criteria which we put out, but you will also have the opportunity to meet people around the world from 11 or so countries and growing who share your affinity. And the way to do that is to be able to firstly know where the people are, so to understand the tag, and then to be active in those areas. So again, is to encourage them to actually share things with those tags. Now that could be their blogs, their reflection, their videos, their playlists. It can be anything. And then, according to what they're interested in, well, we can help them do a number of different things. It could be they're interested in coming to France. Well, we can offer that option if we ask our students, would you be interested in welcoming people from Finland and vice versa? It doesn't have to be reciprocal. It can be something which we simply investigate. Is that possible or not? If it's possible, we do it. If it's not possible, we say, well, that's something that perhaps we can work on for the future. So it's really, again, if your students, Lena, are ready for that date, that's absolutely fine. We can share with you the programs that we're working on in Clermont-Ferrand. So if that's interesting for you, I can do that immediately. Then it's a question of deciding what sort of students you're interested in. So I can talk you through those different students. You can choose to put some with one group and some with another. It's really entirely up to you. And then we can offer them the whole informal package, which is a question of finding your way and explain to them how to actually meet up with other people.
Yes. Sounds interesting.
Right. So if we come back to the original document, Clavier Education Affinity,
Yep.
Right. Let's go down a page a moment. We're at page 4. Right. Right, go down to page 8.
Yeah.
Right, at the moment we have 300 students in sports science, in psychology, history, science, mathematics, etc. And they are working with Warwick. Now, there's nothing which would stop you actually getting your students doing like Anne-Laure are doing in French, to actually participate, observe in that program. That means that they would see different environments. They would see the Moodle, they would see the different tasks which have been set out, and they could act as mentors within that. That's one option. Another option is that they wouldn't get involved with that at all. They'd get involved with our end, which means they'd have access to Google Documents. In the second year, undergraduates, I'm going to find that in a moment. Class notes. Right.
May I ask, so these students are, said they were studying French.
Right. We have students in Warwick who are studying French, and they are working with students in Clermont-Ferrand who are studying English.
Yeah, okay. So which languages are they using? Are they using both?
Yeah. So that means that we have a group of trainee French teachers who are animating, who are preparing activities in coordination with the teachers in Warwick. And one possibility which is envisageable is that you would do the same thing with your students for the English. Or they don't have to get involved in that at all. They could be involved in... I'll just share with you this. I have to change that a moment.
I think the tasks for our students shouldn't maybe be too demanding, complex education-wise, because this is an elective course for intermediate studies, so it's a very broad range of people. It's a different thing if we had a project with advanced study students who actually have been in pedagogic studies already.
Okay.
So
No
it's
problem.
a slightly different audience here.
Right. So in that case, I'm going to share with you this. So I'm back in the Hangout. If you look at that.
Yep.
Right. So that is a second-year undergraduate course. Can you see that?
Is that the Clavedu hashtag directory, you mean?
Right. No,
Yep.
well,
No.
if you go down, so I explained to you the hashtags. So the hashtags are around affinity. So those are the ones we share with the students, and we develop those with the students. And they're then putting them on their documents to identify themselves, and then they identify their posts on Google Plus or in other places with those tags. So if I go down, you will see week 1, week 2, week 3, which we're on page, if I insert the page numbers. Right, bottom of page 2.
Yeah.
Go to page 3. Right, so they're working on a library workshop from October the 21st to the 25th of November. So those people are working with, they're developing their media literacy, their information literacy, by working on a presentation which is connected to their affinity, and they get help to actually do the research with the librarians. They constitute bibliographies, which they then reflect on in French, and they create a scoop-it. I don't know if you're familiar with that. A scoop-it.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
Well, I'm not actively using it, but I know what it is.
Okay. They make a curated artifact with their research, and they make a presentation, an oral presentation, which is at the end of November.
Okay.
So that's one.
In French?
Area. No, in English. All of that is.
Yeah.
The only thing they do in French is the work they do with the librarians.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that's one possibility. Another possibility would be to, if I come out of that, the third year, have to change the share settings. Okay. Right, so this is the third year version. So they are, before Christmas, working on news reviews around about that time. So they're going to be talking about... Okay, so this is much less structured in a way. They're making... Okay, so the first they're doing, they're making video tutorials. Then they're doing... talking about... It could be about education, could be about anything. They're using TED as a resource, and they're going to talk about things which they've learned from TED, and then they're talking about news, and then they have to give feedback, so they have a portfolio at the end, dependent on what they've done during the year. So that's quite open.
Okay.
So that you could fit in with any of that before Christmas. And in master level, well, the masters tends to be more connected to a professional. I've got 2 masters groups, 1 business and 1 health.
Well, maybe that's not for this group, maybe.
Okay.
So can you say something more about this TED task?
Okay. So basically, the idea is that, well, this may actually change. Things are changing as we go on. They're building up at the moment environments in which they can learn. So they identify the areas that they're interested in. So I'll give you an example. I have a student who's interested in rugby. So what he does is first evaluate where it is that he actually wants to make progress. So he analyzes the context. So you'll say, for example, well, I want to coach rugby, or I want to just speak about rugby to other people. And then from that, we then see what he's actually able to do. And then we show him how to constitute resources. So you'll constitute resources, for example, on YouTube, using Google, and also resources which are human resources. So in the case of rugby, we'll start matching him up using hashtags with other people who perhaps have a different level in the language, who are perhaps interested in communicating with him, perhaps in a different country. So, for example, if we take your Finnish people, they may be interested in theatre or poetry or sport or something. So they could actually work with people around that affinity to mentor and to develop their English language around those areas. So that would mean, I mean, it could be anything. I mean, they could be doing discussions, they can do what we like. It's up to them.
Yeah, and so what was the technology they were using for?
Technology is basically Google Hangouts, the same that we're doing at the moment.
Yeah. Well, this might be something that could be suitable for that course, because it would be interesting for them to, because you mentioned that you would look what people are interested in, then you would think about where they want to make progress, for instance, whether they want to coach or speak about it. So actually you are focusing on the social action, not the linguistic elements to start with. So that the social action, that's a new kind of, that's what we want to promote here, that kind of view. So the learning design starts from what you want to do. To start with.
That's what I understood that we understood.
Yeah, sure. So that would actually be something that could be developed into something that people could do in projects.
Certainly, because if you like, the library, if you the second year or the third year, or any of them, we're working in the same way. That's to say that firstly you say to them, okay, well, there are certain academic requirements. And one of the requirements in the second year is to develop a presentation around something which they have an affinity for. And what we've seen in the past is that they don't know how to search, and they don't know how to constitute resources. So we introduced the librarians to help them do that. Then what we discovered is that because we have this dialogue, firstly with their affinity, then with the librarians that are actually learning the skills, their level in linguistics just exploded because they had actually done a lot of reading which they didn't do before. So in other words, it's always the same idea. You first start from the individual, you then identify what it is that he wants to do or says that he has to do, and then from that we identify, okay, so where are the contexts that this is going to take place, and how can we enable that person to actually enter into those contexts. So the first thing would be to say, well, so if I take the experience we had before last 2 years with the Polish. So the first thing that happens is that they say, oh, we don't understand why we have this exchange. Well, that's beginning to change because the culture gradually, year in, year out, is actually changing that. Then they say, well, that's really interesting, but I really need to speak to somebody who I share affinity with. Of course, you don't speak to people that you don't like, and you have nothing to say. So then it's a question of how do we identify these affinities? Well, it's a very, very sort of it's an absurd way for the teacher to try and do that, because we don't know. We don't know them. We don't know. You know, they might tell us, but we're not going to manage thousands of students. That's absurd.
Yeah.
So it must emerge from the student, which means that we then teach them how to network, the interest of tagging, the interest of sharing their reflection, the interest of sharing their various artifacts, which constituting these environments in which they can actually add value in whatever language it is. And we're seeing extraordinary things. We're seeing students who never imagined blogging suddenly blogging. I can give you an example. It's extraordinary. We have I don't know. I mean, who knows what will happen if you get people who are able to mentor them, who pay attention to them, who they care about on a mass scale. We've seen bits of it, but we've never really found a way to actually enable them to self-organize. So I don't know what's going to happen. So clearly, what would be interesting would be for you to do the same thing. That's to say that you get them to create a profile somewhere. Then you ask them to identify what are these areas of affinity which they're interested in. If they don't exist in the list we have already, we invent some more. That's what's happening all the time, every day. We can then introduce the sort of playful aspects. So, for example, we have a T-shirt competition going on. It could be design your own T-shirt. It could be anything. Anything that we imagine, we can then put into practice and communicate it across the network, and then see what happens. It can be a book club. For example, on Fridays, I set up a space where people who I have in my network can just come and speak. I never know who's going to turn up, but if they want to turn up, then well, it's extraordinary because we don't know what's going to happen next. I remember the first discussion. I had a guy, it was 5 o'clock in the morning, the other guy was 6 o'clock in the morning, and they chose to hang out with me when it was 1:30 for me in the afternoon. So that indicates an enormous amount of motivation. Well, when you have that engagement, then interesting things happen.
Okay. So what would be the
practically speaking, what I suggest is the following. You get your students to create a profile where they describe themselves, and then you introduce this idea of tagging. You explain to them that these aspects of finding people in space. That if you like playing football, you go to a football club. If you like playing tennis, you go to a tennis club. But that's locally. If you want to find people that you've never met in your life across the world, then it's not so clear where to go. So Clavier enables you to find people of your age and affinity who all have the same interest.
Yeah.
And the first thing to say is to say, okay, we have academic interests, so you're going to be talking with people who are learning English. and you are going to participate in their learning. And if it's part of your program, you are asked to observe and find more information about these people in their context and how they are dealing with this situation and what they're actually doing. So they are observing and participating.
Yeah, that's fine. And so that's absolutely what we want to do now.
Good.
Or what I want to do, and I think they will be interested. And it's sort of broad enough as a task, and people can do it. And we have this participation aspect and the reflection aspect. Excellent.
Yeah. Okay. And the other thing to stress is this business of informal matching up across the hashtags, because if we can actually model Hangouts, if we can model Twitter chats, if we model all these things, then, or blogging, or whatever it is, then gradually people will find their way into these spaces.
Yeah. Excellent. I have to go soon, so this sounds very good. And now I have, after getting my compulsory jobs behind this application thing, then I can concentrate on the coming course.
Lena, what I suggest you do is you introduce them firstly Google applications.
Yeah.
Then Google Documents, you get them working with that. You get them to put hashtags at the top of their documents so you can search by affinity. You then take them into Google+, get them to create a profile. Perhaps introduce them into the teacher ed community where there will already be people active in it. And then from that, we'll then match them up with whichever students that you want. And that will go on from that.
Yeah, okay. I'll make some sort of instructions, guidelines for the students, and then I'll let you see.
Okay.
Then so you can comment on that.
Fantastic.
Where I'm going. Great.
All right, that's great. Because the other thing is that there also, if they're in that space, there will also be the Polish, and there'll also be other French who want to teach. So perhaps what we can do is we can introduce them. We have to see. I have to take it day by day. But we can introduce them to the second or third years. And we'll see, because I may juggle a bit with other colleagues to see which ones we direct them towards. But if we say the starting point is teacher education, there'll be the Polish, there will be the French undergraduates, and already there'll be a bit of mass, a critical mass in that space.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Sounds very good.
Okay. Good. So, the other question to bear in mind is the research question. So if there are particular areas that you want to look at, then we need to think about that sooner rather than later so that we can actually get consent forms sorted out and the data collected in the way that you want it to be collected.
Yeah, well, what I am interested in, and I know that Marita is also interested in, is how people, what people do in situations like that, because we have, especially if we have environments where you can go your own routes and there are different alternatives. So first of all, the kind of action or interaction perspective, what people do there, what is created during those sorts of affordances. And then the other thing is the reflection bit, then what they do.
Because I think that's another aspect. I think that certain of the students are already interested in being participative in the research aspect.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
Yeah, and it might be, I mean, thinking about this informed consent part, that, well, I have 50 students, so I cannot say that I can't ask them all to do it. I think most of them will be interested and willing. Usually we might get one or two who are not interested in being part of research. So I can always find something else to do for them. Okay. So it's not going to be a problem, but it would be good to have the consent part also ready before we start.
Yeah. Okay.
Or essential, of course.
The other thing which is important is that if we know together what are the moments where we can actually meet up, that's really important, because otherwise we're going to waste time. So I don't know if this time, for me, this time is okay on a Thursday at 2.
Yeah.
That's okay. So if you want to book me ahead,
yeah, sure, I
then
will.
let's do it. Then I know where I am.
Okay, let me see. Well, so what about the 16th of October? That's the kind of final stage when we need to talk, because the following week is our autumn break, and then after that the course is starting then on Thursday. So the 16th of October, would it be possible to meet you on?
Let me just check.
Around,
16th of October.
Yeah.
No. Okay. All right. So that's okay. That might actually. That's the day before. This might interest you. We're launching the Warwick Claremore exchange in between. Let me see what time. So that might be quite interesting, because we're having all sorts of things going on.
You mean I could participate?
Well, yeah, you could.
Yeah. Well, I have.
If you're free.
Well, I have meetings from 12 to 4 Finnish time, so in the afternoon. So.
Do you have anything in the morning?
No.
Okay, so I can send you. I'll just send you an invite to. It's on the 15th, so 11 o'clock until about 1 o'clock.
Is that your time
UK
or our
time? No, it's 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock on Wednesday the 15th.
UK time?
French time, so it's basically from your time, it's 12 o'clock.
Well, sorry, that's...
You're not, okay.
I'm from 12 until 4, I'm busy.
So let's say 2 o'clock then, on the 16th.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah?
2 o'clock French time, 3 o'clock Finnish time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. Are you there, Marie?
I'm still here, yes. I'm listening all the time. I'm
Are you there on the 16th?
Sleeping. I'm sorry, I have another meeting there. No, I can't attend that.
All right, so Lena on the 16th.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, all right. So I booked that.
Excellent.
Right. Okay. So in conclusion, what perhaps is the best thing is if you, in the document that we have, just either annotate it or add something to it, so we know a bit more what we're doing, and any questions, and then we can get ahead. So basically, from what I've understood, your students are arriving about 30th of October, is that it?
Yes, we have our first session then, so some might
join
the same. Yeah, that's the first session, so I think some people might log in the same evening.
All right. Yeah. All right. So basically, they're going to arrive in Google Plus, the teacher education community.
Yeah.
Right. And from there, they won't have a lot of time, but they'll have like about 3 weeks. So they'll have, let me see, the week November the 4th, November the 11th, November the 18th. So basically, you've got about 3 weeks to actually interact with our students who are undergraduate.
Fine. Sounds good.
Okay.
Excellent. Yeah.
All right. And we've always got a backup with the teacher ed thing.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Oh yeah. There's one last question.
Hmm?
It's quite possible that we'll have students who would like to ask your students questions from their end, or do little research surveys.
Yeah.
So
Fine.
again, that they would just stick in the appropriate place on Google Plus as soon as your students are there.
Yeah. Fine. Excellent.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Good. That seems clear enough.
Yeah. Sure.
Thank you very much, Lena.
Thank you.
Have a nice afternoon, evening.
You too.
You too.
Okay. See you later.
See you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Right, Marita.
Yes.
So, over to you.
Over to
So,
me.
Let's
Can
see where
Yes.
we can fit this in. So, when are your students arriving?
I'm working at the school right now, so this is a little bit problematic. I'm working with teenagers.
Yeah.
So what would be really interesting from my point of view is to get your prospective teachers to create something for these people. So they are pupils from 13 to 16 years.
Mm-hmm.
And
So to create something for them, that would be.
Yes.
Can you explain?
something that would make these young people work with a foreign or in a foreign language,
Mm-hmm.
and experience some cultural, I don't know, differences perhaps. At the same time,
Mm-hmm.
yes, we could actually evaluate the tasks that your students are creating
Mm-hmm.
and comment them,
Mhm.
if that makes any sense for you.
Right. So let me just. Can you imagine something so that I can sort of imagine it better?
Well, what I'm thinking myself are some sort of tasks where several subjects would be combined, and they would have to find out something in a foreign language. In fact, they are doing similar things that you're doing with your students.
Mm-hmm.
For example, they are having news flashes, and they're creating their own portfolios at the moment as well. But of course, there are differences because we don't have this academic touch there.
Mhm.
They are very much in the beginning of the learning of their English. They have been studying English for 6 or 7 years. Some of them are quite fluent. Some of them are quite, well, the opposite.
Yeah.
And my personal aim at this is to encourage them to use the language and see different ways of learning.
So could that fit in? For example, if we have our students who are they're creating tutorials for
Yes.
different aspects of things. So they could be cooking, they can be doing sports, they can be doing all
Yes.
sorts of things. So they're doing that in, of course, it's their second language. But
Exactly.
if they were able to get your teenagers to actually do what they were asking people to
Yes.
learn, then that would be clear demonstration of communication which is meaningful and actually getting them to do so.
Exactly. That's what I was hoping for. Yes.
Right. Well,
Yes.
let's try and do that then. So my students, if I look at the programs, I can't remember which year it is. So what I can say to them is when they do their tutorial, I think it's in the second year, they're working. When are they working on it? Let me just have a look.
Okay.
Because if the tutorials are already made, then they could actually start communicating. What dates are we talking about?
Well, I meet these people, some of them twice a week and some of them 3 times a week. So basically, any week is
At the moment, you've got them
at the moment until Christmas time. Yes.
So, practically speaking, is it possible to get them into how many are there?
Well, there are something like 125, but there are.
Fantastic.
Is that fantastic? Okay. Yes. In one group, there are basically something like 20 to 25 people.
Mhm.
Yes.
Well, why don't we get them all?
We can get them all. Yes.
Get them all into one place, and then we'll see what happens. If we were to get them all into Google Plus, for example,
Yeah.
into a community, if we set up a community for, and we call it, I don't know, what do you call, you can decide what you call it. You call it, I don't know, clavier play. I have no idea. We find a name for it. We set up a community. Then we have a space where they can get to know each other.
Right.
And you can use the same thing with your lot. That's to say, they learn about tagging, so that we can try and get the students who are sort of interested in the same things together.
Right.
And so that the tutorials will then be tagged and put into your community.
Okay.
And our students can be asked to find more about what it's like to be a kid in Finland learning languages, and generally find out more about all of this context.
Sounds good. Sounds really interesting, yes.
Okay, and then perhaps we might ask Clarissa in Brazil.
Exactly, yes.
To get her lot in.
Fantastic.
All right,
Yes.
so basically we're looking at a play space where people can share how to make t-shirts, how to rap, how to do graph, whatever it is. How to
Yes.
make cake, and then they go off and do it, and then they share it together, and they continue.
Okay, that sounds really good. Yes.
All right.
And then back to research. What we could actually take a look here is the professional growth of these young people. Not the learners that I'm dealing with, but your students over there. What do they get out of this, and how they, I don't know, how they, do they get anything meaningful out of this, and how they can benefit everything in their future work, for example?
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Well, I think like all of these things, we have to be what's the word?
We have to be crazy.
Yeah, well, I'm that, but we have to be what's the word? We just do something, and then we see what happens.
Right.
And as we go along, we make it up as we go along, because frankly, I have no idea what's going to happen.
Nobody knows.
But nobody will die. So
nobody would die. Nobody. I hope nobody will get hurt. So.
No. So I think we just take it from that, because it's like these picnics that I do.
Yes.
I mean, that is actually the story of that was I was supposed to have a meeting with you two. So I planned the meeting, and then there was a guy called Terry Elliott in Kentucky who I met the week before, and I thought, I want to meet Terry again. So Marita and Lena won't mind. He'll come along. And then you couldn't come. And so I was there with Terry and Keith in Florida. And we had a fantastic time. So that's basically, for me, is the space. We have to create the space for things to happen.
Yes.
And not try to imagine necessarily what can happen. We don't know.
We don't know, and we can let things happen.
Exactly.
Yes.
But in the knowledge that if we have people within the network which is developing all the time, who knows? I mean, we can get people in. For example, Kevin Hodgson. I don't know if you know him, but Kevin Hodgson is a friend of mine who I've been doing poetry with over the past 9 months. Well, I didn't write poetry really much before, but with him, it's such fun that we just do all sorts of crazy stuff. So if I could get him involved,
Yes.
I mean, he'd be game because he's teaching teenagers.
Oh, really?
And you know, and then there's Susan. Susan, well, that would be really interesting because Susan is teaching in New York, and you have to meet this lady. I've never met her.
Okay. Okay.
We keep communicating on blogs, so we have some sort of bond. She has kids. They don't go to her school unless they have a criminal record.
Okay. Well, that
So
sounds interesting. Yes.
Yeah, fascinating. So all the things that they get on TV about, you know, Miami and the American series, you get the real gangs and the real problems. I mean, it's just terrifying. You have to read this blog. I have to find it. I find this blog. I'm going to find 2 posts which says, I think, quite a lot. This would be interesting for your kids.
Okay. Yeah.
Hang on. Right. So, where were we down here? It's hilarious. You know, with marching on Friday. We did a conference in Krakow.
Did you go to Poland? You went there?
No, I wasn't there. I was in the room, but like I'm in your room. And it was we'd never done it before. It was a laugh, and it was like I was in the room. It was extraordinary. And then at the same time, I forgot to turn off the microphone, so I had Keith in Florida. So when you hear the YouTube video, you can hear me chatting to Keith in Florida, who's saying, "Where are you? I'm waiting for the picnic." So, okay, if you click on that on the chat box.
Here we are.
Right. So here is her. You go right down to the bottom of the page, to the comments, and then you find S. Watson. Can you see that?
Just a minute. I'm a bit slow. S. Watson, where is that?
Right to the bottom where the comments are.
Yes, S. Watson.
Right.
Okay.
Read that.
Alternative school. Wow.
Okay, so we put this in. Last thing. Hang on a minute. If I come back here, I find you the last thing that she wrote, because that really puts things into perspective, because it connects with the experience I have here in Clermont-Ferrand with immigration. Now, where was it? Right, so if I take that. Right, if you look at this post here.
Oh, which one?
Right, if you go into the Hangout.
I'm going to the Hangout. Just a minute. Here we are. Yes.
Right. So you click on the last link that I gave you. Right. So I'm going to tell you the story.
Okay.
So I sang Happy Birthday with my students for 27 seconds because it was Maha's birthday in Egypt.
Okay.
We then shared it with Maha.
Yeah.
Okay, in the space of about 20 minutes, there was Kevin in Massachusetts did a remix of it.
Okay.
There was then Terry in Kentucky who changed it into Arabic. And then at the end of it, Maha recorded a thank you song for my students. Okay, so that's just to put it in. So after 27 seconds, that happened. Then afterwards, there was Susan. If I find, no, maybe it's not in this post. Maybe it's the last one I did. There was Susan who then responded to all of this.
Yes.
I mean, it's just madness. Hang on a minute. I can't find it anyway. But she speaks about she has a 12-year-old kid who never spoke, and the reason is he comes from the Ivory Coast.
Yeah.
And he was in a war zone.
Oh.
So.
Okay.
Of course he never spoke because he's completely traumatized, the poor kid. And suddenly found himself in the USA. So these are the sort of realities of students, you know,
Yes.
for that. And it's the realities also of the students we have. In my master's course at the moment, I have a student from Syria. I have other people who are African who arrive in Claremont and they're completely lost.
Yeah.
So all the connections actually start being made. So the students will say, I'm useless at learning languages. Well, they then start questioning that and saying, well, why am I useless in learning languages?
Yeah.
And they're beginning to understand that maybe it isn't just them. So this relates to everything which I learned from you. As nexus analysis.
Oh, okay.
Of deconstructing the actual discourses which are existing in a particular space.
Yes.
And once you start doing that, you start seeing things completely different.
That's right.
And this, if you like, is an element which is being introduced, which is empathy.
Yes.
Across frontiers. Well,
Right.
that's very powerful. Yeah. When you have somebody in Egypt singing to somebody in France, thank you, because they just sang for 27 seconds.
Yeah.
The result of that is that I have students who do this, if I can find it in a moment. A blog of a student who suddenly decided, it emerged, he wrote a blog. I was amazed. Yeah. Where is he? Can I find the link? Oh, no, it's not that. Right. I find the link to his blog, and you see what I mean then.
Okay.
So this is a student who just came to a class expecting a normal class. And after his first class, he then wrote a blog.
Let's see.
So it's called It's called My Four Seasons. Can you see that?
Yes. Yeah, I have it. Okay. Okay. Great.
So suddenly the space is not the same.
This is wonderful, I think. Yes.
So, you know, who knows? I mean, that's after 2 lessons. I've no idea what happens after 2 years.
Well, that remains to be seen. Hopefully something happens.
I don't know. But it's worth being there to find out.
Yes, indeed. It is.
So, you know, if we can get people together who actually share stuff, if you can, if you set up the community, or I set up the community, then we can take it from there. Do you want me to set it up?
Please do, because you know all the technical stuff so much better than I do.
Okay, so I'll set it up.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Then you get your students in there.
Right.
And then I'll tell my students who are learning to do tutorials that they're going to do tutorials for people in this space here.
Okay.
And then we try and get Clarissa to get her lot in there as well.
So I'll ask them to introduce themselves shortly.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Yes, in whatever way they want to.
Yeah.
Right.
The other thing is, which is really important, is that they learn to share their content. That's to say,
yes.
Photos which are not, how can I put it, put them in danger.
Right.
Which enable other people to sort of start empathizing where they are.
Yeah.
that could be an event which we create. We need to, basically, I would suggest we look at the same startup date as the teacher ed community. Let's say the second week of October.
Second week of October, that's the 6th. Or do you mean the 13th?
Let me just go down the thing. It is the week of the 13th.
Okay, yes, that will give me time to get all the permissions from the parents, because they are minors. I need permission for sending their photos and so on. Right, that's perfect, yes.
So I think that if we view it on the most basic level, right?
Yeah.
I set up a community. Let's imagine it's a complete disaster and my students don't turn up. So we can complete it. This happens. It's like the picnic. So we create the community. The first thing that your students do, they start investigating how to present themselves to other people.
Yes.
That's the first thing. The second thing is they start learning how to share their environment so that they're not in danger.
Yes.
The third thing they do is if you use the same hashtags, they start identifying which are the areas that they're interested in. So they then start getting resources, which can be playlists on YouTube, which can be whatever it is.
Yes.
I can talk you through all those different elements.
Yeah.
And then they start sharing their added value according to what the resource is. So, for example, if they have found a great video on YouTube, they then explain why is it great for them, what is it that is interesting.
Yeah.
So they're contextualizing it and personalizing it. And then from that, you gradually take it to making their own videos or writing their own blogs or whatever it is. And from that onwards, if we make it, that's the other question for your parents. If we make it not public in the first instance, perhaps, but we can invite people in there. I don't know. It's up to you. If we make it public, let's make it public. We'll make it public, and then explain to them.
That way.
Yeah. We'll explain to them what are the risks. I think that's probably a better idea pedagogically. We'll make it public.
Yeah.
However, we can see, if there's any problem there. But
yes.
We'll make it public, which means that we can then start inviting other people. I mean, there are all sorts of people that we might get involved. I don't know yet. Because there's a whole. Do you know Joe Dale?
No, I don't.
Right. Well, there's a whole lot of English teachers who work with blogs and all sorts of stuff in the UK, and that would be interesting to get them involved because then, of course, the language level is not the same.
Exactly.
Okay, so what we're doing a teenage, I could get my wife involved, teenage community for being a teenager in English and any other language they choose.
Yes, that sounds good.
Right. And they can go off and play Angry Birds or whatever they do.
Yeah.
And I can tell my children to go off and do that as well if they want.
Exactly, yes.
Right, good. Well, that seems like pretty straightforward. So the date of that is starting the 15th.
Okay.
So before we get there, you need to have got your kids to create profiles for themselves.
Yes.
They need to have been talked through the business of hashtagging.
Yeah.
They need to start perhaps assembling resources, like what's interesting for you. That doesn't have to be digital, it can be anything.
Yeah.
It can be a leaf or whatever, and they take a photograph of it. And so on.
Well, that's a good beginning, I think. And
I think it's often better not to use a computer at all. It's often better to actually model things like, you bring something which is interesting for you and you talk about it.
Yeah.
It's just amplifying the thing digitally.
I lost your voice.
Hello?
Did you say?
Yeah.
Now I can hear you, yes.
All right. What I said is there is amplification
Yes.
of what we do, but then there's transformation of what we do, because when you start introducing people of different time zones, completely different cultures, etc., then the story changes.
Exactly, yes.
Which is where it becomes really interesting.
Right.
Right, this is fun, Marita.
This is going to be fun, I know.
Oh, dear. But just to be clear, I'm in this for the long term, because I've reckoned that I've got about, I'm now 52.
Yeah.
So I've probably got another, 13 years of this. So I
we
intend,
have time to practice.
I intend to make it, like fun.
Yes, you should have some fun when you're working,
Exactly.
all the work and so on. But I'm always looking for change, and I'm looking for change in my own working habits at the moment, and this is something new.
Yeah.
So this is
All
great.
Right. Are you aware of connected courses?
Not really. No.
Right. If you have any moment at all in your life,
yes,
and you're curious of connected courses, I'm going to sell it to you. All right.
Okay. Okay.
Connected courses started about 2 weeks ago, and it is for me the top people in education for connecting learning and changing education in the world.
Yeah.
So you have people like Howard Rheingold, who you may or may not have heard of, who is an extraordinary person. He was there right from the beginning in California with the beginning of the internet.
Yeah.
You've got all sorts of characters who are in secondary or in higher education. And the whole business of learning, I think I've made enormous progress this year because of my learning, which has been, the rhizomatic element of it has been amplified extraordinarily. Because when you have all this potential connections coming in from all different areas, it's very difficult not to make more progress.
True, yes.
And meet some really fascinating people.
Yeah.
And be challenged with things which I didn't necessarily think about. Issues like silence, or I think the only way to actually transform things is to actually transform oneself.
I think you're right, absolutely right, yes.
I think because otherwise, how can one possibly talk about it in any? It may sound like a good idea, but if you're not living it, it's very difficult to actually.
I agree completely. Yes.
Be of much help. It's just theory.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the problems. I see projects, for example, in Brazil, and they're using language, but they don't actually have a clue what they're talking about because they're trying to control networks, and they're trying to control learning, which you can't do.
Yeah, that's something interesting as well. Yeah.
So, if you want to sort of find out what sort of people are doing, then there is this link which I'll stick. To a bunch of completely crazy people. Anyway.
Is this Max no, that's the Four Seasons, yeah.
This is it's called Connected Courses. So
Connected
if you Google
courses.
that.
Okay.
And then I'll introduce you to all my friends who would be really interested in everything that you could possibly say.
Okay.
If you've got a blog, then that'll be great. You connect it up to their course site.
Okay.
And then you get people starting getting curious about who you are.
Right.
And there's a whole pile of stuff. Then we can learn together, Marita, at the same time.
That's right. Yes. Let's do that.
All right.
Great.
All right. Well, that's fun.
That's fun. Yeah.
You tell me when's the good days to actually communicate. I know that Facebook. I tried Facebook. You apparently use that.
I'm usually free on Friday afternoons,
Yeah.
anytime after 11 or 12.
Okay. Well, Friday afternoons is generally okay for me. If you
Okay.
want to come to a picnic tomorrow, I'm having a picnic.
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
What time is that? I'm sure I have an invitation somewhere, but
Probably.
yeah, I'll be around. Yeah,
If you pop in or not, it doesn't matter.
yeah,
That's what's
Okay.
interesting about it. I never know what's going to happen
yeah.
because people say I'm coming and they don't come.
And they don't. Oh, tomorrow I definitely do have time. I'm sitting here in my office at the university tomorrow,
So it's
and
2 o'clock your time.
okay, that's fine. Yeah, right.
All right. So if you want to come, then you
Yeah.
just give me you tell me.
Yeah, I'll be there tomorrow. Yes.
So tomorrow there is apparently they say
Okay.
there is Teresa.
Yeah.
There is who else is there? There is Thomas Savino. So he's a really
Okay.
interesting case because he's a student of marching.
Okay.
And he's doing really interesting stuff with his students. So he's driving hashtags. That's really interesting. And there is Marcin, who should be there as well. So they're all Clavier people.
Okay.
And then there's maybe a guy from Florida. There's maybe a guy from Syria. There's maybe a guy from Holland.
Okay.
Who knows? So we might imagine that we're going to talk about that, but we'll talk about something completely different. I don't know.
All right. That sounds good.
All right. So that's at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock your time
2
tomorrow.
o'clock. Yes. Sounds good.
Okay then.
Okay, I'll see you tomorrow in that case.
How unpredictable. Right, okay. I'll speak to you tomorrow then.
Okay.
Have a nice time, Rita.
You too. You too.
I'm off
Bye.
to get the kids.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.